with an Hispanic. New polls come out daily, many you never hear about, but the analysts at pollster.com average all those results together for a different look at the horse race. Joining us now is Mark Blumenthal, editor and publisher at pollster.com and a former Democratic consultant. Thank you for joining us, Mark.
Good to be here.
First of all, why do you do this? Does averaging polls give us a more accurate portrait of what's happening?
Well, any poll, even a perfect poll, is going to have variation, random variation built into it. And there is some benefit in taking a lot of different polls because that average variation tends to cancel out.
Let's start with the GOP's national trend. Giuliani and McCain took major hits in the last 6 months. Fred Thompson has seen the biggest jump. Now he's within 5 percentage points of Giuliani. What's the biggest shocker on the GOP side?
I think just the fact that the race is as fluid as it is, that it's as wide open as it is, despite the fact that we started with two very, very well-known candidates in Rudy Giuliani and John McCain. It is right now pretty much anyone's race to win, particularly in those early states, Iowa and New Hampshire, where Mitt Romney has gained because he spent a lot of money on television, but it's way too early to try to determine who's the likely winner. And
by the way, Attorney General Gonzalez just walked into the hearing room with the Senate Judiciary Committee is going to be grilling him today. There's a shot of that, and we will be talking about that later on. But now back to pollster.com. Mark, if you take a look at the individual primary polls, Romney has skyrocketed in Iowa and New Hampshire. Could his support spread into other primary states?
Well, the gamble that the Romney campaign is taking is that if they can pull off a win in Iowa or New Hampshire, that they'll be able to ride momentum into those other states. And historically, that's a reasonable gamble to take. It's a little early to say, I should say, I don't think that'll happen before those states, although that's clearly a jump that they're trying to make now.
Now, Romney has used those polls in individual states to argue that he, not Giuliani, is the real front runner here. Do you buy that?
Who the front runner is sometimes is in the eye of the beholder. The race starts in Iowa and New Hampshire. And if one candidate can figure out how to win both of those states, historically that candidate almost always wins the nomination. So he has a reasonable case to make that by being the front runner in those two states, he should be taken more seriously nationally. It is still awfully early, and he has been the only Republican candidate on the air at this point. Once the others join in, this could change.
John McCain, we know his campaign has been struggling with money and staff resignations. How is he looking under your analysis?
Well, he's dropped, and in these early preference polls, even in New Hampshire, which was the state that catapulted him to success in 2000, he's under 20%. But you know, the beauty of the way these elections work is that really he has to get back in the race. He has to convince a third of voters in New Hampshire that he's their best choice. He'll have access to them, and so there's still a McCain candidacy to watch.
In your latest blog, you mention a Survey USA poll of last night's YouTube debate. That survey shows Senator Clinton winning the debate, increasing her support by 3%. But you are quick to point out potential flaws in the method. When you look at individual polls, what's important to keep in mind here?
In terms of the debate reaction?
Right.
It is very difficult for pollsters to try to gauge who won a debate. You take pollsters out of it, it's a little hard to figure out what the criterion is supposed to be. I tend to agree that the measure of success in a debate is whether a candidate's moved their campaign closer to the nomination. And by that score, we probably ought to be waiting until the next round of public polls, because the audience for the stories about the debate this morning on the Today Show and in the newspapers is far greater than the debate than the audience that actually watched it last night.
On the Democratic side, the pollster average shows Clinton leading Senator Barack Obama by almost 13%, but Obama's had the biggest increase. Do you expect that trend to continue? What's the state of that race?
I think it's always dangerous to guess what the trend will do next. The Obama increase was largely because he started much more unknown and got a huge burst of publicity when he entered the race. It has now sort of settled down. Given that we're still 6 months away from the New Hampshire primary when the voting will start, it may be that those standings will not change all that much. The races to watch and the polls to watch are the ones in the early states where the candidates are about to start running their paid television and campaigning in earnest.
Right. Speaking of which, the average of the Iowa poll shows John Edwards leading the pack. Analysts say anything less than first in Iowa could be the end of his campaign. Looking at the numbers, can anyone catch up to him?
The numbers are close enough. As I recall, he's at about 30, and Clinton is a few points behind, and
right.
Obama behind that. The interesting thing is, if you look back, as I did on pollster.com yesterday, at the polls done in Iowa and New Hampshire at this time in 2003, the co-leaders in Iowa were Congressman Dick Gephardt and Howard Dean. And I guess that must be John Edwards calling me.
Or one of our callers calling in to ask you a question.
Anyway,
okay.
Let's see if I can make that stop. The co-leaders were Gephardt and Dean, and of course, when the caucuses were said and done, the big winners were John Kerry and John Edwards. So
right.
well, we have a long way to go.
We sure do. Okay, great. Mark Blumenthal, thank you so much. Pollster.com.
Right. Thank you.
Money, money, money. It all comes down to the campaign cash for the candidates. Check